Welcome to Stone Soup Group's Guides and Mentor Training, Session 8, Cultural Responsiveness and Deaf Culture. Learning Objectives. You will learn how asking questions and being aware of personal bias can help you be more culturally responsive. The difference between deaf and big D deaf and unique features of the deaf community. And the differences between medical views of deafness versus big D deaf cultural views and why it matters. Cultural responsiveness. Rather than trying to be culturally competent, which implies mastery of a skill, we work to be culturally responsive and have cultural humility. Culturally responsive recognizes the process of asking questions, being open, being strength-based, and working to be aware of our own bias. Cultural humility acknowledges that the family is the expert on their experience and perspective and allows them to teach us as we work together towards a common goal. Be curious and seek to understand. When working with people who come from different cultural and social contexts than your own, you may need to do more self-reflection and ask more questions. Stay open and curious rather than judging. It is virtually impossible to have a deep or even working knowledge of all cultural groups, but we can have awareness, knowledge, and skill sets to work effectively cross-culturally. Ask questions and listen to what they say. This helps you better understand the family's mindset and point of view. If you find yourself making a judgment or having strong feelings about choices a family is making, take time for self-reflection. Maybe your personal bias is getting in the way of support. The LEARN model. This model was developed for healthcare providers who work with patients of various cultural groups. It provides a framework for how to approach working in a cross-cultural situation. Changes from the original model are noted. This model can be used to promote better communication with a family from a culture different than yours. L stands for listen, E stands for explain or empathize, A stands for acknowledge, R stands for respect, and N stands for navigate. L, listen. Listen to what families say with empathy and understanding. Listen to the family's perception of the problem or issue without imposing values that may conflict or be inconsistent with those of other cultures or ethnic groups. In being communication neutral, you practice listening without expressing your personal belief system. How might that be the same when working with a family of a different culture than yourself? E, explain. Explain your perceptions of the situation and empathize by understanding that the perception of illness and disease and its causes varies by culture. Use positive and strength-based language to support better communication. What can this look like when working with a family from a culture different than yourself? A, acknowledge. Acknowledge and discuss the differences and similarities. Recognize that culture influences how a family will work with medical and education systems and providers. What can this look like when working with a family from a culture different than yourself? R, respect. Respect individual preferences and decisions that the family makes. What can this look like when working with a family from a culture different than yourself? N, navigate. You can support families as they navigate educational and medical systems as an advocate for what they hope for their family. What can this look like when working with a family from a culture different than yourself? Deaf culture. There are medical views of deafness and cultural views of deafness. People who identify with a big D deaf culture feel they are part of a cultural and linguistic minority who use American Sign Language. Often, they do not agree with the medical view that deafness is abnormal or a medical problem. Medical terminology such as hearing impaired or hearing loss imply there is a deficiency. Not all deaf or hard of hearing people identify with deaf culture. Though some individuals fully embrace all aspects of deaf culture and community, others may identify only marginally or not at all. It is very important not to assume what words people use to describe themselves. Ask how they refer to themselves or their child and how they identify. What is deaf culture? Check out this video and just watch the 5-minute section from 3 minutes to 8 minutes and 15 seconds. Go to the main training page and then come back to finish this presentation. This video shares about deaf culture from the experiences and perspectives of deaf young adults, and it was created by the Connecticut Museum of Culture and History. Medical versus cultural views on deafness. The medical view of hearing loss may be thought of in the deaf cultural view as hearing level, status, abilities, or differences. The medical view of early intervention may be thought of in the deaf cultural view as early family support and collaboration. The medical view of a failed hearing test from the deaf cultural view would be refer with explanation. The medical view of diagnosis from the deaf cultural view would be identification. The medical view of a grief process could be the deaf cultural view of a journey. And the medical view of disability from a deaf cultural view could be culturally diverse. The deaf community and introduction. This handout from the National Center for the Deaf is a good resource to share with hearing parents to help explain deaf culture. Deaf culture activity. Read through the unique features of deaf culture on the handout. Think about the following. What are some of the reasons parents would not want their child to identify with the deaf community? How can you explain the benefits of being part of the deaf community? And what are some specific ways you can model strength-based wording about the deaf and hard of hearing when supporting parents? Next up, EHDI Map Session 9, Ways to Support Families.